one of my early days, uh, I was really into visual effects at the time, and they put me just into a suite, into an edit suite, and for this major drink brand, and said, "Hey, we need you to rotoscope some stuff. Can you knock this out?" And I was like, "Yeah, I can do it." I was a scared kid, but I was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." And I just remember being like so nervous, having like such imposter syndrome, but also just being like, "This is happening. I can't believe this is happening." So, they trusted me to do that, and I'm really really thankful for that. And worked with them and kind of worked my way through both the post department and on set in the camera department as well. Kind of doing a little bit of everything, lighting, which I've done some before the theater, some camera work, assisting camera, grip, all that. And then from there, I left and started doing freelance work. So all this is going on while I'm doing NYU. I'm kind of bouncing back and forth between like doing film and then taking on projects and freelancing and doing documentary and then just kind of going back and forth, doing some commercial and documentary, I should say. Did that for a little bit, and so that was kind of a really interesting time because I was kind of learning as I went, both like trial by fire and like academically. And I think like if you have control over this, maybe try to do the academic part first, like a normal person, because it's hard doing both at once. It's really a lot to cram, but I kind of hung in there and did a
Dennis,
little bit
you
of
don't
both.
need to tell us your grades. You don't need to tell us your grades. It's okay. Safe space.
I had a very very I had wonderful like academic advisors, and they were very understanding of days where I remember there were days when I would just come from a shoot and go straight to class, and they drop me off in a production truck, and like you would just see like this big production vehicle roll up to the campus building, and then I just like stumble out, and I just been on set for like 12 hours, and I look like a mess. It's like, all right, I'll see you. Time to go to class, and kind of stumble in, and it was such a wild time, but it was really cool. It really taught me a lot about the industry from a hands-on perspective, and I think the grounding part of it was that I think in college we all tend to be very optimistic. We all think, hey, I'm going to come out of here and I'm going to be a director and I'm going to be a cinematographer. And like you can be those things, but there's also a lot of stuff that you have to sometimes go through to get to those things. And so for me, it was very grounding in that I was the low man in the totem pole for like a really long time, and just kind of did all the stuff that no one else wanted to do on set. And that just led to doing the things that to eventually being trusted to do the things that maybe you do want to do here and there, and having some people kind of take you under their wing and show you things here and there. So I always really appreciated that, and tried to keep that sense of like helping others. If you can help someone else that's trying to come up in the industry, or at least open a door for them, or at least kind of give them an in, like that's always something that's really really important. So did that for a while, and then that led to me doing some of this stuff. That led to me doing more physical stuff. Around the time, I was starting to get more and more involved with like trade shows and theme parks, and there is a group called the Theme Entertainment Association, and they focus on theme park work, theme park development. They'll do science centers, museum exhibits, and all that. And so there's a whole creative world that just does these things, and that was kind of new to me. Like I didn't know that was a job. Like I would go on family vacations to theme parks and places, and I didn't realize that like obviously someone has to make it, but it just kind of dawned on me like, wow, someone designs this, someone makes this. This is cool. And so I started doing some freelance work in that space, uh, because there was kind of this big conglomeration of, well, that's not a word, of tech and film and media and interactivity all coming together. And a lot of the inherent concepts of that field came from film. I mean, a lot of it came from the early days of something like Disneyland, where they built this theme park and there was nothing like it at the time. And so at the time, I'll put my Disney hat on for a little bit. Walt Disney went to his studio and plucked a whole bunch of film people and said, "Hey, design me a park." And they were kind of like, "Okay, sure, we're animators, but yeah, how do we do this?" And so what they had to do was figure out how to tell a story using a physical world around you, using actual space. And so instead of maybe having frames and camera movement, you had rides, you had pathways, you had walkways, and you can really kind of control the sight lines of what people were seeing and doing. And so I started doing some creative work in that space and wound up working with a company called Telescope, who I believe are still around. They're incredibly wonderful. They were really neat because they were very much willing to take chances on creativity and technology, and really wanted to do some cool stuff. We did a lot of science centers. So here is an exhibit on the Rubik's Cube that we worked on, which was really kind of nice because they got like Ernesto Rubik to work on it. This was at the Liberty Science Center in New Jersey. I'm from New York originally, by the way, and so this was all in New York. And I was spending a lot of time down in Florida with the theme park industry and kind of going back and forth, and this started happening. So this exhibit actually wound up touring the world, but we worked on science centers for the whole world, everywhere from like Turkey to you name it. It really kind of spanned the globe, the things we worked on. And I was also really lucky in that at the time I was spending a lot of time around Walt Disney Imagineering and around like Universal Creative, which was their answer to Disney Imagineering. And there are just so many wonderful people who took me under their wing, people who worked with Walt Disney himself back in Disneyland, who were willing to tell me things and teach me things, which was kind of mind blowing. People that I've read about in books or seen on like documentaries that were like, oh yeah, how we did this, and that's it's really kind of crazy. I remember one day when we were in Orlando with a couple of my coworkers, and we went to an event for the opening of the new Harry Potter Wizarding World in Universal. And in my ride vehicle were Bob Gurr and Marty Sklar, who were two of Walt Disney's original Imagineers who designed Disneyland. And going through this ride with them, seeing the look on their faces of this, as they experienced this attraction. These are people who invented this industry, and they got to experience what it was like in I forget what year that was, but in the 2010s, I think. They got to experience, the newest iteration of storytelling and technology and media, and they were just completely overwhelmed by it. And I just thought, wow, like that is such a cool experience. So, yeah, stuff like that really kind of lives with you. And it just really kind of makes you want to experiment more and push the boundaries more. And so here's kind of some of that where, let's see, I think that was a photo working on a new place in San Antonio. I think it's called the Museum, which is a children's museum. Children's museums are really fun because they really encourage you to play and interact, and there's a lot of stuff that you can touch and try and run around with. And then so top right, there's some media stuff. I did a lot of physical interfacing stuff, and it was cool in that I kind of got encouraged to just play with things and just kind of break things and be creative in different ways. And so I played with the content. I played with doing like seamless projection mapping stuff and all kinds of weird ideas, and lots of late nights just trying to come up with off ball stuff. Like I have a piece of an audio animatronic on the bottom right that I was working on, and some of the mechanisms of that we actually used 3D modeled models to animate these physical animatronics so that we can kind of animate them like a movie, and then we can just transfer that, download that animation cycle right to a physical animatronic that can then interact with guests and really show them like something cool that lines up with maybe something that was in a movie. You can kind of do a one-to-one transfer. So stuff like that was really just crazy.
And I want to pick up on some of the things you mentioned that seem to be themes that run through it. For example, you mentioned right at the beginning when you were working in film, you were uh, just starting out. You were given a bunch of roles, and then you just kind of you were embracing doing the things that other folks wouldn't do to sort of learn different roles in the team. And then eventually they gave you a rotoscoping job, and you're like, sure. Like, the way you said it sounded like you didn't really know what rotoscoping was, but you were confident enough to say, you know what, I can probably figure that out. I mean, what would you say about that as an important thing for a creative to embrace?
Super important. I mean, there is paying your dues, and that's just kind of comes with a lot of industries, and it looks different in every industry. I mean, in film and TV, I mean, as an intern production assistant, you're sometimes just like getting people to sign off on like talent releases. I had to drive production trucks. I had to like pick up talent and like get to the set. Like there was all types of random things you had to do. You had to go to like a prop store and like get like a rubber chicken or something for a shoot. You never know what the day is going to hold. But do those things. Do every single thing you do with excellence. Do everything as good as you can possibly do. Do it because at the end of the day, those are just indicators as to how you're going to do when you're on the creative front. When you're doing the thing that you actually want to do. When you want to actually be the creative person there, you're you're letting them know that you're capable of doing this thing and that you're responsible. You're reliable. It's not about you. At the end of the day, there are needs of this team that need to be accomplished, and by helping them accomplish those things, and you're now part of that team. And then it's kind of like a bank. Like you have to put money in before you take money out. Like you have to really kind of contribute some time and energy, and build these relationships, and show that you're trustworthy. Because at the end of the day, if they would have just thrown me into like a rotoscoping thing on day one, like I could have like catastrophically screwed up, and that would have potentially cost money and time, and I could have still screwed up, of course. But it got to the point where they trusted me enough to say, hey, you should give this a try. We think you could do it. And sometimes you need the person who thinks you can do it, even if you think you can't do it, or if you think you're not ready.